Ladies and gentlemen, our program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats and silence your electronic devices. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President of the Society of Women Engineers, Cindy Hoover.
Good morning. On behalf of the Society of Women Engineers Board of Directors, I welcome you to Day 2 of the world's largest conference and career fair for women in engineering and technology, We19. I hope all of you had a great first day at We19 and have found new ways to live, learn, and lead. In addition to everyone who is here with us in this room, I also want to say welcome back to everyone watching the program via live stream. Hello from Anaheim, and we're glad to have you join us. All right, so before I introduce this morning's keynote speaker, I want to acknowledge a special group of SWE leaders, our fiscal year 20 Senate. The SWE Senate is the strategic body of the society that advises the board of directors and the membership on strategic issues. The members of the Senate participate in strategic work through the strategic planning process and research of strategic initiatives. This year, the Senate has 4 strategic sub-teams working on key issues for the future growth of the society. Would all SWE senators and Senate leadership please stand and be recognized? Thank you for your service to the society. We have a great keynote speaker for you this morning. Someone who will take us on a journey traveled by a number of people you're familiar with and maybe a few who you don't know. But before I get to her presentation, I'd like you to consider something. As we sit in this beautiful hall this morning, I'd like you to think about how your life has likely been touched by work from all 4 of this morning's sponsors. You may be enjoying one of PepsiCo's beverages, traveled here on an airplane manufactured by the Boeing Company, checked into your hotel using your Discover card, or had part of this convention center or your hotel or your home constructed with products by Stanley Black & Decker. While our sponsors' work, products certainly surround us, their continued support of SWE is proof of each of their ongoing commitment to diversity and inclusion in the workplace, while providing high-quality education and networking resources to their potential candidates and current employees. As part of our appreciation for our sponsors, I've asked each sponsor to provide some brief remarks. First, I'd like to welcome Jeanette Ramos, Senior Vice President of Manufacturing, Supply Chain and Operations with the Boeing Company.
Good morning, everyone. I love this energy. And I think Cindy, wow. Okay, a little bit of coffee in you. Cool. Well, note that she said be brief, right? I am just your infomercial this morning before your keynote speaker. And I just wanted to say, I studied your event theme, and I am so inspired. Not only was I inspired by that disco music, because I come from that era, yeah, I know some of you are the same. Learn from your past. And for me, my mom passed away a year ago this week. She was a physician. She taught me everything about courage and integrity. Build on the mentors from your past. And then as far as, my history and my journey, I was a SWE, a proud Society of Women Engineering treasurer 35 years ago. Okay, and if you weren't convinced that I was ancient, I just gave you the clue. All right, so live the present, and just to give you context, my responsibility today is all of manufacturing, supply chain, and operations for the Boeing Company. I'm proud here today to represent the 150,000 women who design, build, and support every manner of aircraft from sea to space. And here today, we're going to honor some of our award recipients, Dr. Heislip, my colleague on the Executive Council, Jamie, Elizabeth, Colleen, and Stephanie. And for all of my Boeing teammates who are here today, if you could just stand up, please, and help me honor this room full of our potential future. Hey, and do you think if I said, for all you who want to be potential Boeing employees, would you stand up? Would the whole room stand up? All right, that's my recruiting speech. You know, the Boeing company has an amazing legacy. We are 103 years old. We connect, we protect, we explore the vast reaches of space. We inspire the future, and that's what this room is about today. You are our future. We need more women engineers in the world. Yes, we do. And we just plainly need more engineers in our country, right? So on that note, continue to connect in your network, help each other out, inspire each other so that we continue to build on the engineering legacy that this organization, SWE, to which I have benefited from 35 years, continues forward. With that note, let me introduce our Boeing video so that you can see the keynote. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette and Boeing. Next, I would like to introduce Sarah Breifogel, Senior VP, Chief Credit Officer with Discover.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Breifogel. As just mentioned, I'm the Chief Credit Officer for Discover Card. And on behalf of Discover Financial Services, welcome to SWE, the conference, annual conference of 2019. It's amazing to see everybody here, and I am honored to be a part of this. When I was hired out of school to work at Discover 28 years ago this week, actually, I was hired from a career fair, but I can tell you it was nothing like this. So it is incredibly inspiring to see everyone here. As I walked around yesterday, I thought, my daughter is 15 years old. She excels in math and science, and I really hope that one day she will be here as well. Events like these are incredibly important for supporting women in technical and quantitative areas of study and professions, and for companies like ours, which are striving for a greater diversity and hiring for these roles. So I am not an engineer, even though my father really tried hard to get me to be one. He is an engineer. He also wanted me to be an F-16 fighter pilot. So I did neither of those things, and instead I run a team of about 200, a little more than 200 data scientists. So I am proud to say that 50% of our data scientists and managers in my team are female and extremely multicultural. So we are working hard to build the leaders of tomorrow within Discover. But not every team is as diverse, and not every company is as diverse, and that is why programs like this are so incredibly important to us. But this conference is really more than just a recruiting event for us. It's a way to build relationships in the technology world and to learn from other leaders. So here is my shameless plug. So stop by booth 1201, see if we can make a match. We are actually recruiting for over 300 roles in technology and data science. So I will be there after this. And please have a great time at We19. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah and Discover. Your continued support is always appreciated. Our third sponsor, PepsiCo, is represented by Global R&D Director, Dr. Dipali Palta.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yes, there's coffee. As Cindy introduced me, I'm Dipali, and I am a STEMinist. Yes. From the cheer and applause, I can see that most of you know what the STEMinist is. If you don't, STEMinist is someone who advocates for growth and development of women in STEM. I feel like my journey as a STEMinist started when I was in middle school, when I was constantly asking why and why not. I remember being part of the vocational training classes in India when I was growing up, and we were divided into two groups. The girls sat inside, cut some newspaper patterns, laid them on a piece of cloth, and made underwear. Yeah, while the boys were outside, playing with electrical gadgets, where I could see the tiny little light bulbs flickering on a board. Now that I was curious about. I was not curious about underwear. So I politely annoyed my teacher back then and relentlessly asked her to send me outside to play with the electric gadgets. Finally, she gave in and sent me out for the rest of the class to be at the electric gadgets. So that day kind of started that seedling of an idea that I wanted to learn more about technology. And I kept growing my love for technology and finally graduated with a PhD in material science and engineering from Georgia Tech. While I find that curiosity and courage have been the two foundational pillars for my journey as a STEMinist. Now, it was actually curiosity that got me excited about PepsiCo career booth when they came to Georgia Tech, because I didn't understand why they'd need a PhD to make potato chips. We can make potato chips at home. I mean, you cut them, you fry them, and that's it. Why would I go there? I know. So they told me that potatoes is an agricultural product. They don't grow or look the same anywhere in the world. But when you pick up a Lay's potato chips bags, they taste exactly the same. Now that takes engineering. How fascinating is that? Needless to say, I was excited to apply there. Now the problem was I was the wrong major. This is where courage came in. So I was a material science engineer trying to apply for a chemical engineering job. Instead of focusing on the degree, I actually focused on its application and realized that there were a lot of commonalities with food. And I explained it that way, and for me, fortunately, PepsiCo agreed. So if any of you are interested in degrees that we're not hiring for, just come see me and we'll figure out a way. Well, I've been at PepsiCo for 12 years. Why? Because about every 2 years or so, I've gotten an opportunity to do something different. And the same questions I've asked are why and why not? Why not this opportunity for me? That two-string questions have led me to the world of process engineering, where I started, went to product development, sustainable and biodegradable packaging, and also working in Africa on clean water access. So there's a lot you can do at PepsiCo. Now I have the pleasure of leading a department full of talented people, and we work on building new process capability for PepsiCo, including things like machine learning and artificial intelligence. I know, artificial intelligence and potato chips? Doesn't that make you curious? If it does, come see me. Well, one of my favorite quotes comes from the movie Wedding Crashers. Yep, I said Wedding Crashers. The quote goes like this: "We have no way of knowing what lies ahead of us in the future. All we can do is use the information at hand and make the best decision possible." Now, as STEM professionals, we are all about data and decision-making that's based on data. But life is hardly going to give you situations where you have all the right data to make the decisions you want. Now, that's where your decision is going to need some courage. And I call that intentional acts of courage. A young woman recently came to me and asked if she should apply for an internal job change. I asked her 2 questions. Are you curious about this job? And are you going to regret it if you don't apply? Thankfully, she listened to her own gut and had the courage to apply. I'm so glad. I want to introduce you to some more courageous and amazing PepsiCo women sitting right here. Please stand and be recognized. These women all come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different degrees, and they even do different things in PepsiCo. The one common thread that relates us all is that we built our careers on the foundation of intentional acts of courage. Now, I want you all to be empowered and have the courage at this amazing platform SWE has provided to take the step and ask why and why not of each other and certainly of us. You can talk to us here, or you could also come and meet us at the PepsiCo Student Challenge at 10 a.m. in ACC 212 today. And we can tell you why PepsiCo is the tastiest, STEMinest company. Thank you.
Thank you to Polly and PepsiCo for your generous support of SWE. Our final sponsor this morning is Lisa King, Director Engineering for Stanley Black & Decker. Lisa?
Thank you, everyone. What a great morning to be here in sunny California. Back at home, it's 37 degrees and it's snowing. So this has been a great refuge for me from this cold weather. So my name is Lisa King. I'm the Director of Engineering for Battery Technology at Stanley Black & Decker. Stanley Black & Decker is a $16 billion purpose-driven company. We have 61,000 employees in 60 different countries. So lots of opportunities throughout the world to experience other cultures, to experience cross-development. Our company's purpose is for those who make the world. And that's a fierce commitment to designing products and manufacturing the most innovative and powerful quality products for storage, hand tools, power tools, fastening, security, storage, healthcare, industrial, and home products. So we make things for the makers and the doers. We're proud to be recognized by the Patent Board as in the top 10 most innovative companies in the world. The Dow Jones Sustainability Index says that we're one of the most sustainable companies. Mogul also says that we are in the top 100 companies for hiring millennial women. Yeah. As far as my personal tie-in to the conference theme, we live, we learn, we lead, it resonates with me in terms of my personal growth and my career growth. So I thought when I was about 14 that I wanted to be a chemist. And then I found out what a chemist does. They mostly work in labs, and they have to go through school for a very long time. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be hands-on. I wanted to make things. And then I learned what it was to be an engineer. And so I decided to pursue chemical engineering. And for whatever reason, I took an internship in a battery company. And we did a lot of testing and development for batteries. And if you had asked me at that point in time whether I would be doing this in 5 or 10 years, I would have said, no way, like, this is really an odd field for a chemical engineer. But here I am 30 years later, and I've found a way to make lots of experiences with batteries, whether it was testing them or developing them or designing them, and now also, helping to design and lead the battery supply base to make the most powerful batteries that there are in the industry today. So at Stanley Black & Decker, we believe in coming as you are and being your authentic self. I've been there for about 7 years, and I've found it to be the most relaxed and inviting environment that I've ever worked in, mostly because everybody is very open and honest, and it's just been a great experience for me in learning, valuing people, giving just importance to everyone, no matter what role that they are in and that they're bringing to the table. So also, it's taught me to be brave and step up in a career where the women are a very small minority in this power tools industry, which is a very predominantly male area. Within Stanley Black & Decker, the Women's Network, ERG, is one of the largest and most successful. In our Maryland location, I've helped to start a Women in Engineering program where we provide technical rolled women for networking and mentoring and coaching, and we advocate for each other. And it's been so successful, we've had an over 80% participation rate because the women there are so desperate for that connection with each other. We strive to be a company where you're given those tools to succeed and grow. And no matter what your background is, we have partnerships with organizations like SWE so that we can achieve that goal. And I thank you so much for the advocacy that you provide to women in engineering, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
I'm really inspired and like a fire is lit in me when there's perceived barriers in my way. When someone tells me I can't do something, I'm going to find out a way to do it. I think it's really important to have makerspaces because it's kind of like this big melting pot of people and ideas and techniques that kind of opens your world view past what you're maybe used to every day. Part of a makerspace is not just the tools that you have access to, but the minds that you have access to. It introduces them to a new way of thinking, which leads to innovation, it leads to creativity, which then heads back to our customers being able to experience something better from our products. But I think where we'll see it go in the future is small one-off startups, entrepreneurs doing small-scale fabrication. And I can see that instead of being one factory that makes a bunch of stuff, it's kind of a crowdsourced way of manufacturing. I studied art and sculpture, metal sculpture specifically in school, and I was fortunate enough to take a class called Women's Fabrication where they would shut down the whole shop and only allow women in. It was a woman teacher. So I learned in an environment that was very judgment-free. And especially for young women, tons of young women don't go into science fields, they don't go into engineering fields, they don't go into medical fields, because I feel like there's so much stigmatization out there that that's not what you do. So when people are like, oh, well, you're a girl, so you can't weld, or even just being in a space where you can feel that kind of aura, it's my life goal to prove that anyone can do anything that they want. Being in a makerspace environment is perfect for me, and why I thrive so much here, I think, because I can empower other people in the way that I've been empowered.
Thank you, Lisa and Stanley Black & Decker, for your ongoing support of SWE. Thank you to all of you for your investment in SWE. Before I introduce this morning's keynote speaker, I'd like to remind everyone we will have a Q&A session after the presentation. Questions can be submitted via Twitter, and anyone can submit. Please submit using the hashtag AskSWE, which is up on the screen, and you can also see Yes, you can see them up on the screen. We do receive many questions, and while we can't get to them all, we will try to get to as many as we can. I am very excited to welcome our keynote speaker, Rachel Hunter, Senior Vice President for International Facilities Operations, Services, and Worldwide Safety, Health and Engineering for Walt Disney Parks and Consumer Products. A long time ago, in a galaxy far away, a young engineer dreamed of creating magic at Disney. Over time, she lived, she learned, and now she leads engineering at the $20 billion Disney Parks, Experiences and Products segment. Like all epic adventures, there were successes and failures, triumphs and tragedies along the way. Today, in celebration of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge theme park lands, Rachel will share inspiration from the women of Star Wars and how we can apply their learnings in our engineering leadership roles. Rachel has a BS in electrical engineering from Michigan State University and a minor in theater. Her 22 years at Disney have allowed her to experience many different roles and responsibilities and lead teams in Paris, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Tokyo, Anaheim, and Orlando. But more importantly, she's here today to share her stories with us. Please give a warm, sweet welcome to Rachel Hunter.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today. This has been a dream of mine for many, many years. How many of you heard Carol's keynote yesterday? Yes, so not only did Carol just kill it in the keynote, but you may remember she shared that picture of Devil's Tower and how she was the youngest person to ever scale Devil's Tower. I went to Devil's Tower as an adult, and I could barely get past the boulders on the bottom. So you're probably thinking I'm nursing a big old case of imposter syndrome here right now, but I am not scared because I have a secret weapon. You see, most keynotes start with the speaker sharing a video for folks who aren't familiar with their brand. So for anyone who's never heard of Disney Parks, I'd like to introduce you to what we do. Okay, this would have been way cooler if the clicker actually worked.
This outpost is in danger from the First Order. Thank you for joining the cause, and may the Force be with us.
You ready?
Are you?
So if right now you're thinking, I would do anything to be one of the engineers that get to work on those amazing rides and attractions, then you get me. I have wanted to work for Disney ever since I was a child. In fact, when I finally got my opportunity with Disney, my mom gave me this big box of papers, and it were all the school assignments starting from kindergarten on with the prompt, when I grow up, I want to, ... And every single one was about how I was going to work for Disney someday on the incredible rides and attractions. But it was not an easy path. There are times, in fact, that goal seemed unreachable. But I kept hold of that one thing that's core to every Star Wars story, hope. Because hope is what helps you get through and find your way to success. And I think that's why I felt such a strong connection to Rey, first introduced in The Force Awakens. See, Rey's had a rough go of it. I mean, her life has been really, really difficult to the point that even introducing herself, she says she's a nobody, just a scavenger. But she's so much more than that. She's brave and resourceful. She can speak multiple languages, even talk to droids. She literally has the skill to pilot her way out of the troubles that she's in. And of course, she's an engineer, so she's awesome. But Star Wars is all about the balance of the Force. There's the light side and the dark side, and there's a balance between them. And our strengths and our weaknesses are the same. Rey became so strong because she had those weaknesses, but her strengths are also a weakness for her. So one of her most enduring strengths is her incredible optimism about others. But if you're like me, I watch these movies and I see her trying to find the good in Kylo Ren, and I just want to scream at the screen, "This is a really bad guy, give it up." But it's also that optimism of human nature that allowed her to become friends with Finn. So when we first meet Finn, he's the opposite. I mean, he's brash to the point that he's making up qualifications. "I'm with the Resistance," he says, even though he's not. He's the Star Wars poster child for faking it until you make it. And it reminds me of advice that came from my friend Allison. So Allison's an engineer at Disney, and she's vice president of transportation operations. Not a real typical engineering role. Well, Allison's philosophy is the only jobs worth going after are the jobs where you have a lot to learn. So you may have seen the statistic that women won't apply for a job unless we meet 100% of the qualifications, where on average men will apply for a job even if they meet 20 to 40%. So I love how Allison turned that on its head by saying, there's no point in going after a job where you already have 100% of the qualifications. What on earth are you going to learn in that experience? When you're looking for your next experience, find something that's going to stretch you and grow you, where the majority of the parts of the job will be new things for you to learn. So don't be Finn and exaggerate the qualifications you have, but be Ray and embrace your innate ability to learn. See, our engineering education wasn't about formulas and calculations. It was about learning how to learn. And that's so important because there is truly a full universe of opportunities for us in engineering. Just when you're at the point you've mastered the skills you have, there's all new areas of engineering that you can learn and explore. Let me show you some examples.
Electrical overload.
I can fix that.
Coolant's leaking.
Try transferring auxiliary power to secondary tank.
I got it.
Good. Gently.
So engineering is also about looking for flaws. So I'm going to embrace that head on and share with you some of my flaws and some of the mistakes I've made in my career so that hopefully you can avoid some of these traps. So these are the headlines, but I'm going to go into each of them in a little more detail. Starting off, you may recognize Poe Dameron and Vice Admiral Holdo from The Last Jedi. So for those of you that need a refresher, Poe is a fighter pilot with the Resistance, who are the good guys, and Vice Admiral Holdo, of course, is the boss. So she's got a much bigger and wider perspective than Poe. And because Poe doesn't have that perspective, he sees her as a barrier. In fact, he comes to actually even see her as the enemy. Well, that's obviously a very, very dangerous place to be. None of us are going to find fulfillment in our jobs if we think our boss is the enemy. So here's what I've learned. Get the facts. Don't assume bad intent from your boss. And don't talk about her behind her back, assuming bad intent. Invest the time and courage to talk to her face to face and find out the full information. Find out the facts. I have an older sister, and she had kids before I did. So when I was pregnant for the first time, I asked her for some parenting advice. And she said, never judge someone whose kids are older than yours, because you just never know until you're there. Any parents out there? Okay, so pre-kids, how did you feel when you were at the grocery store and you saw some parent letting their kids have a meltdown, right? So then what happens when you have a cart full of frozen food and your own kid is screaming and crying because you won't buy him a candy bar? It all looks different from the other side. And our jobs are like this too. Early in my career, I was really quick to complain about why my boss never did that and why my boss always did this. Well, when I eventually got promoted to my boss's level, I learned exactly why my boss never did that and always did this. I wasn't acting with courage and speaking truth to power. I was just demonstrating to the people above me that I didn't understand the complexities at the next level. Take time to understand those complexities and give your leader the benefit of the doubt. I have big news for you. You are going to make mistakes in your career. And even bigger news, your boss is going to make mistakes too. And just like we expect them to have the discretion to not talk about mistakes we made with other people in the organization, We need to afford them the same discretion. It doesn't mean you ignore it. It means you talk to your boss behind closed doors about the mistake and never talk about it behind their back with other people in the department. Now, we talked about shadow sides. One of my strengths is I have a very high sense of responsibility. It is so important to me that I do my job well and I pave the way for the next generation of amazing women that are going to be leading Disney. But the shadow side of that is it makes it really difficult for me to ask for help. I don't want to appear weak. I don't want my male colleagues to think that I'm not qualified to be at the level I'm at. And there were times in my career where it was very, very lonely because I wasn't willing to reach out and make that connection point. So for any of you who might look back on their career and feel a similar hole, I want to share some advice with you.
The belonging you seek is not behind you, it is ahead. I am no Jedi, but I know the Force.
And ladies, the belonging we seek is within our control. It's really, really important that you build your squad. So this is part of my Disney squad. For anyone who had a chance to listen to the podcast about this keynote, you may remember I talked about Doreen Mitchell. Doreen Mitchell was the first female engineer to become an executive in my division of Disney. She's the blonde woman to my right in this picture. Next to her is Michelle Adams. Michelle leads risk management for Disney. So 5 years ago, when I took on safety responsibilities, I understood codes and standards and engineering controls, but I would sit in meetings and we would talk about actuarial reports and referred medical treatment, and honestly, I felt like everyone might as well have been speaking Wookiee. So I gathered my courage and I went to Michelle and said, will you please help me understand this? And Michelle distilled decades worth of hard-earned knowledge to an hour-and-a-half-long tutorial who brought me up to speed. With a squad like that, there is no way I can fail. So here's some other members of my squad. When I first got promoted into my role, my friend Joyce, she's at the lower left, she gave me a cup that said, behind every successful woman is the squad of other successful women who have her back. So these are some of the folks that have my back. At the upper right is Laurel. Laurel and I met over 10 years ago when we both worked together at Animal Kingdom. She's in communications, and our work paths have never crossed since, but she is an amazing collaborator, and I always call her when I'm doing a big presentation. She was core to this presentation today because your squad doesn't need to be with you every second of the day. You just need to know that when you need them and you call them, they're going to be there. There's two special members of my squad I want to call out. The first is the woman on the right in the upper center picture. That's Esther Andrus. And then on the bottom right is Trish Hamer. So Esther and Trish have been coordinating all of the Disney presence at this week conference today, and they are amazing, amazing women. Please do yourself a favor and meet them and make them part of your squad. So I'm also blessed that I have a fabulous SWE squad. Can I hear from my SWE squad? So these are people I have met when I first started attending SWE 15 years ago, and I get together with once a year, and they enrich my life in unbelievable ways. So please reach out to anyone who yelled woo when I said that, because I personally promise your life will be better for it. But ladies, I have to tell you something. We are terrible about building squads. So we're all engineers. I can actually quantify this for you. Over 16,000 of you opened and read the email about this keynote. Over 4,500 of you went to LinkedIn to read more about it. So you were already in LinkedIn. Do you know how many people sent me a connection in LinkedIn and said, hey, I see you're doing the keynote and I wanted to connect? 7. When I told my husband this, he said, 7,000? No, 7 total. Ladies, build your squad. And here's why it's important. This is the newest member of my squad, Ashley. So Ashley connected to me in LinkedIn literally minutes after that email came out. And she shared with me that it's her dream job to be an engineer for Disney. Notice what Ashley's wearing? A Disney name tag, right. Now, listen, I was not the first person Ashley connected with. In fact, she shared with me that she'd had at least 10 failures before she was able to get this opportunity. And she wasn't counting failures as I sent an email and I didn't hear back. I mean, we are talking galactic-sized failures, like hunted people down, pleaded for them to give her an opportunity, then they gave her a technical assessment of how to be a mechanic, even though she's a controls engineer, so she literally failed the assessment. But Ashley kept learning and growing until she was going to pass any assessment that anyone gave her about anything until she got her dream job. So I'm going to switch gears and share kind of an embarrassing story about a colleague I was really slow to add to my squad. This is Deb Hart. When I first met Deb, she was in human resources at Disney, and she had perfect hair. And I would like to put this in perspective. Deb had perfect hair in Florida in the summer while pregnant with twins. And she had perfect clothes, and she always used perfect words. And I was so intimidated by her gifts that I actually created this whole backstory of, well, anyone who always knows the perfect thing to say isn't always even being real, right? Well, one day Deb and I were invited to the same meeting, and the meeting had changed locations, but for some reason, neither of our phones updated. So we're sitting in this conference room awkwardly for like 10 minutes. And then finally I blurted out, "You have perfect hair." And I would like to say that I said it as a compliment, but I'm really sure it came out as an accusation. But because Deb always knows the perfect thing to say, she smiled and said, "Well, thank you. Do you want me to tell you what hair care products I use?" And I was in shock. Like, there's a hack to this? And she's willing to just share it with me, even though I'm sure it took a lot of time and money for her to figure out how to do this. And as Deb and I got better and better friends, I learned there's a hack to a lot of her skills and abilities, and she was generously willing to share all of those with me. Don't let our differences be a point of disconnection. Make them a point of connection. You know, we talk a lot about diversity and inclusion, and often what we mean by that is we want other people to accept us as we are. But the flip side of that is we also have to want to accept other people who are different from us. And when you meet someone and you're intimidated by their abilities, that means they have something to teach you. So take the courage to reach out and make that connection point and allow them to enrich your life. Another mistake I've made in my life is when I had a bad interaction with a man at work, I would make the assumption that it was because they had a bias against me because I'm a woman. And I've learned that that is not the case in most cases. Sometimes it wasn't even a bad interaction, and sometimes it was about the work or something completely disconnected to my gender. So it's really important to feel out what is that point of disconnection and where truly does it come from. I worry a bit about women entering the workplace today, that you'll lose out on a big advantage I had because of the backlash against mansplaining. See, I noticed early in my career that if I sat in a meeting and they were talking about a technology I didn't have an experience with or a project that I didn't know, almost always there was a man that after the meeting would sit me down and explain what was going on. And I also noticed that my male colleagues didn't get that same additional support. Now, I could have assumed that these men were trying to belittle my intelligence, but instead I assumed that they were trying to help me. And whatever that innate thing is that makes men feel good about explaining things to women, I wouldn't be in the most amazing job in the universe if that didn't exist. You know, it's never about what's said. It's always about what the intent is behind it. And if you look for bad intent, you're going to find it. So choose to be optimistic. I'm a runner. Is anyone else here a runner? Excellent. So you probably know that when you are running into a headwind, it is terrible, right? I mean, the wind absolutely drains your energy. You're putting everything you can into it, and you're barely moving. Well, obviously, as women in engineering, we have some headwinds. And if you focus on the headwinds all the time, you can get bitter really, really quick. Now for my runners out there, what happens when you're running with a tailwind? You are so fast and strong. I mean, you never feel the wind. You feel the headwind hurting you, but when you got a tailwind, it's just you and you are powerful. Well, we have tailwinds for ourselves in engineering as well. My friend Justin's here to support me at SWE. It's his first time being at a SWE conference. And we talked yesterday, and he said, oh my gosh, I've been to a lot of engineering conferences, and I've never been to one that's this good. SWE is a tailwind for me. This is a tailwind for all of us. It's a huge advantage we have, and I am so, so grateful for it. So actively use your energy to find the tailwinds because they help nurture and maintain your hope. Then it's important we look at the data points. So you may have heard that a big reason between the pay disparity in men and women is that men are more comfortable going and asking for a raise. And the reason they're more comfortable is because bosses, both male and female, are more accepting of a male asking for a raise than they are of a female asking for a raise. So for all of us female leaders out here, we need to recognize that there are social constraints and wiring that we need to actively overcome to help other women succeed. And a big piece of that, Sheryl Sandberg talks about in Lean In, is we just need more women in leadership positions so it looks more comfortable to folks. Cindy Kent, a previous SWE keynote, said, you have to see it to be it. So let's see it.
The Emperor's made a critical error and the time for our attack has come.
When you've gotten past the energy shield, proceed directly to the rendezvous point. Understood?
Yeah. Whatever it takes, this rebellion is worth it.
Follow me, boys!
Onderon is ours, and we will keep reminding them until we get it back.
You'll need this. You wanted one, right?
Your behavior, Janerso, is continually unexpected.
You call this a diplomatic solution?
No, I call it aggressive negotiations.
Now, fighting's a big adrenaline rush, but it's exhausting over time. The last few years have been really hard. Diversity's always been a hot button issue, but more so lately than ever before in my lifetime. In Star Wars terms, there's a disturbance in the Force. And if we put all of our energy on fighting what we hate, we're gonna absolutely exhaust ourselves. And it's really important that we devote our energy to protecting what we love. So for me, that's making sure there's opportunities for women and underrepresented minorities in engineering. Carol shared yesterday the statistic about the high dropout rate of women in engineering. And that's so, so disappointing because after all the hard work of getting the degree, these women are giving up the fun part of being an engineer. So about 15 years ago, my squad and I did some brainstorming about what we can do to increase retention of women in engineering. And my friend Elaine Schomburg-LaFleur, she was my first Ashley, actually. She came to me 15 years ago with equally, I'm gonna be a Disney engineer, and had equally worked through all kinds of hardships along the way to get here. And Elaine took an idea of how do we make sure that people get through school and they get into engineering, and she ran with it. And she created Disney's Ultimate Engineering Exploration. So this has been an established program at Walt Disney World for a while now. And we take students who are in our college program who are studying STEM careers, and we give them a day-long adventure where they get backstage tours and they have networking opportunities and they get involved in a group project. And of course, we're engineers, so we get metrics on all this. And we always love when students say that they really loved the program. But what we most like to see is when we see that it increased their enthusiasm for being an engineer. Because engineering is truly the most amazing profession out there, and it's important that we open it wide and bring all of you into it and keep you into it as well. We are protecting what we love, and it's making a difference. But we're going further because we also feel it's really important that we establish that sense of belonging for little girls who want to be engineers. So I'm going to have a friend of mine tell you what we're doing next.
Hello to everyone at the FIRST Championship. Mark Hamill here. You know, this year FIRST is teaming up with Disney and Lucasfilm as part of the Star Wars Force for Change initiative, and I'm very excited to share with you the theme for the 2020 season. Throughout history, great civilizations have risen, then fallen. Now it's our turn to rise, building and bolstering our own planetary metropolis. A diverse, forward-thinking population has come together to form a galactic hub, a new kind of home that celebrates differences, harmonizes with nature, and embraces innovative concepts and technology. We're listening to and learning from one another as we go, and the result is a thriving community filled with inspiration, creativity, and most importantly, hope.
So I'd like to end with wishing you some things that have been very, very critical to my success in my life. May failure be with you. Because failure is not an end. Failure is a stepping stone that'll get you to the next place, that'll get you to your next success. May hope be with you. Hope is what nurtures our souls when we're going through those points of failure and gives us that clear vision of how amazing our lives can be. May friendship be with you. Build a red squadron of amazing people who've got your back and will help you shoot down any Death Star that needs to be destroyed. May Ray be with you. Find that inner scavenger that allows you to persist and have the grit to get through the difficult times and get through to the great times. And always,
Ray, may the Force be with you.
okay, that was awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess let's start. And don't forget, you can text your or tweet your questions to Ask Sweet. So let's start a little bit with your career at Disney over the past 20 years. Tell us a little bit about the importance of taking lateral assignments and moving maybe a step back to move a step forward and not just straight path for your career advancement.
I'm a big embracer of the whole jungle gym philosophy. In my 22 years at Disney, I have had 10 different roles, and many of them steps really, really perpendicular to the work I had currently been doing. And the job I have now, no one had before me. It wasn't like I moved into a job that was already established. It's sort of this odd combination of things that I had proficiency in from other jobs that allowed my leader to shape a new organizational construct to have me take on all these challenges. So I'm such a believer, if you feel like you're gonna find some joy in something and you're gonna learn new things, take it on, because you never know how that's gonna allow you to create the perfect job for you in the future.
That's fantastic, thank you. So you didn't talk a lot about your family while you were going through your presentation. I know when we chatted, however, we talked a little bit about stay-at-home dads because we both had that in common. So talk to us a little bit about work-life balance and how hard that is, especially with a career when you're flying all over the world. And and how much that helped, and some of the challenges with having a stay-at-home dad for your kids.
Sure, yeah. There's no way I could do my job if it weren't for my husband. He's amazing. We are absolutely a team. And, you know, it's interesting because when I tell people that my husband's the stay-at-home parent, they say, oh my gosh, he's so awesome. That's so progressive. That's so cool. Other men do not respond the same way when he says, I'm a stay-at-home dad.
They don't. They do not.
And frankly, there's no support structure really for stay-at-home dads. There's all kinds of mommy and me groups, and there's all kinds of ways for women who stay home with their kids to find the belonging. But we need to establish that for men, that we cannot, as women, advance until we find ways to support the men who are supporting us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so we're going to move to some of the questions from the audience. So let's go here. Can you offer some advice on how to make a good case to a hiring manager for a job where you see an opportunity to learn and grow, but you only have that 20 to 40% of the qualification?
I am so glad someone asked that question. It's one thing to tell you to do it, but the nuances of working through it are harder. And you know, what you want to do is prove your ability to learn. So I think there's two things that are really important. Esther got promoted about a year and a half ago. And when Esther came into the interview, instead of letting us as the interview panel take control of the interview and asking her questions, she said, I want to start by telling you why I'm pursuing this role and what my vision is for this department. And I was sold on Esther as the choice for this role, honestly, before we even asked a question, because the fact that she came in with such vision made it clear that she was the one who should be leading that team. But the other piece is you can leverage. People are unfortunately not good intuitively at transference. So you might say, hey, look, in the past, I've proven that I can build a team and I can innovate and I can do new things. But if it's in a different discipline than what you're pursuing, sometimes you really have to spell that out for the hiring leader and say, here's why I know I can add a fresh perspective and add value, and I have the ability to learn the critical skills to be successful in this role.
Fantastic, thank you. So you mentioned your amazing Disney squad. I hope. Can you give young professionals some ideas about how to find that squad, and especially in a new location or a new company?
Yeah, it's funny. You know, again, very male-dominated environment that we're all in. So when I started at Disney, I hunted out the small amount of women that were in similar roles, and they were women I didn't know at all because we were working in geographically different places. But I set up quarterly lunches for the women of Facilities Operations Services, and my boss asked me if I was trying to set up a coup, which I was. But I mean, it was amazing how much everyone was looking for that connection, and you know, not everybody was able to participate all the time, but there was always a different group of people, and it just really gave us a chance to meet each other and get to know each other, and know, hey, there's someone I can call for help. And you know, it's funny to say, you know, obviously it's really important that we all have male mentors because there are things they can teach us, but there are some things that are unique about being a female leader, you know. Can I wear this? Can I say this? What, is it okay to say I'm late because I have to pick up my kids, you know? And sometimes you need another woman to get perspective on those types of things. And when you've established that relationship, because now you've had a couple lunches together and you know each other well, it makes it that much easier to really talk about the more vulnerable things where you need a female perspective.
Absolutely, and we have a built-in squad here. Yes. I mean, we have there's 40,000 women in SWE, and there's usually somebody close to wherever you are, and you can, when you move cities especially, it's so nice to just kind of have that built-in way to meet people, because you know, if there's a section close by. So I love that about SWE. So let's talk about hacks. So what is a hack that you have that helped you succeed throughout your career?
Wow. You know, I was really, really fortunate because when I moved into my first leadership role, I asked the guy who was already a peer, so already at that level, who was going to be my peer, and I said, Brian, how do I establish credibility as a leader? And he said, well, you make mistakes and you admit they are mistakes and you learn from them. And I had never heard I had always thought you establish credibility by never making mistakes. And so it was really eye-opening for him to say, no, making mistakes is part of establishing the credibility. And it really took a lot of stress off the whole process and allowed me to push some boundaries and innovate and do things a little differently. I had a neat experience actually while I was writing this keynote. So in that first leadership role, I decided it's really important that as a team, we have a joint vision and mission. And so I gathered the whole team of technicians and I said, look, I want us to all agree on what our vision and mission is. So I'd like everybody to think about what that is to them and bring it to the group and we'll sort through it. And we had a technician on our team who was educated at the University of Puerto Rico. English was his second language, not his first language, and he struggled a bit. And so he wrote out the whole vision and mission in Spanish. And then he had his daughter translate it so that we could all understand it. And it was brilliant and beautiful, and we all immediately fell in love with it and adopted it. And I made up posters for everybody, and we all hung the posters, in our work areas and what have you. And he recently got promoted to principal engineer at Disney, which is, our highest technical level. And I sent him a congratulations note, and he sent a note back and said, it all started with that vision.
That's wonderful.
So, boy, if you haven't taken time to come up with your own vision for your career, I mean, you want a vision for your team, but you want a vision for your career and your life and what fulfillment looks like. And it makes it so much easier to not get distracted by things that aren't a good use of your energy when you've got clear sight of what is good use of your energy.
Absolutely. Thank you. So you mentioned during your presentation, Ray had weaknesses that were also strengths.
Yes.
Can you kind of tell us a little bit about maybe one of your weaknesses that's also a strength?
Yes. So I'm extremely action-oriented. If I'm literally a walking action verb. And my belief is, you can start moving and you can adjust your course while you're moving instead of waiting and planning everything out. And I once made a comment to my boss, well, you know me, you give me 20% of the information and I can make a decision. And he said, oh, we're up to 20. But it's a weakness in interacting with my team. So there's a really cool Myers-Briggs activity you can do where it's a 60-minute meeting in 60 seconds. And sort of based on how you're wiring, it takes you through people who are fact gathering, and then people who are ideating, and then people who are executing, and then people who are cleaning up the aftermath of the execution. And like on second 2, I was executing, and there were members of my team that were ideating until we were 3/4 of the way, who were fact gathering until we were 3/4 of the way through the meeting. And it really opened up good communication for me because they bring such valuable insights to the table of, hey, give me the code word that says stop moving and listen to me for a minute. So Kim, one of the members of my team, she says, well, there's another piece of information we need to consider, and that's like Kim code for slow down. I need to be heard too. And I think I love those types of assessments because I think it's important to know how you're wired. It's important to know how everybody else is wired so everyone can really contribute to their fullest.
Fantastic. So clearly, you're action-oriented. So what's one of the key actionable items that's helped you succeed throughout your career?
I am very fortunate that I worked for a boss that sort of role modeled this, so I was able to grasp it earlier on. But I firmly believe if someone hasn't explicitly told you you can't do something, that is full permission to do it.
Absolutely.
So early in my career, it's funny, I was hired in at Disney and there were 2 jobs open. One was to continue to sustain the Magic Kingdom, and the other was to build the new Animal Kingdom theme park with the Imagineering team. And I thought, well, there's no way they're going to let me build a new theme park. I'm new to the company. And so sure enough, that's the role they put me in. And, I was winging a whole lot of stuff because I didn't know. And then I fell in love with the park because I'm a Prius driving, tree hugging vegetarian, and Animal Kingdom speaks to my soul. So I moved into the maintenance organization, and we were having problems with the sensor system that I had installed. And the technician said, "I'd love to know who the idiot is that put this in." And I said, "Well, I'm the idiot. What should I have put in?" And so he said, "Oh, Imagineering always installs these sensors, and then we change them all out to these sensors." And so I gathered a group of people, and I said, "Okay, I know the Imagineering team, and they all really, really want to do the right things and the maintainable things. So let's put together a preferred manufacturer database for them and share our hard-earned experience of what's worked and what hasn't worked in the past, so the design teams just have an easy resource to make smarter choices." And so I actually went to my boss's boss and said, "Is it okay if I do this?" And not only did he say, yes, it's okay, but he said, think bigger than that. It's not just Animal Kingdom. Find an expert in each of the parks, find an expert in transportation, make this bigger. So, that allowed me to add to my squad with a bunch of new people that I otherwise wouldn't have met, and it ended up being a valuable resource for us to use.
Fantastic. So another question from the crowd. So how do you combat the perception of assertiveness as nagging when it comes from women?
This is so terrible that this is being live streamed, because I'm sure this is inappropriate to say. But the good thing is that once you get into a high enough leadership role, it's okay to nag. So, the thing I tell my team is, look, I need this when I need this. And it is really counterproductive to then say, well, did you get it yet? Did you get it yet? Did you get it yet? You need to take some low stakes things and say, I need this by this date. And then whoever doesn't turn it in, you use that as a coaching moment to say, hey, look, I don't want to be the kind of leader that nags about things. So when I set a deadline, you need to have a good process so that you can deliver by the deadline. And once you establish that, you don't have to keep reminding. And I found the more you keep reminding, the lazier people get about the behavior because they know you're going to remind them. Yep. So, work with people in a productive way, but also don't hesitate to set a deadline and then hold people accountable to that deadline.
Fantastic, thank you. That's great advice. So just a fun one. What's the best thing, and maybe the worst thing, about working at Disney?
So my same friend, Brian, I love leading people. But when you go from being an engineer to leading people, sometimes it's really frustrating because, in engineering, it's so incredibly logical, And when I programmed a roller coaster and the roller coaster worked, no one could tell me I was wrong. I was clearly right because it was working, right? And it's just not like that with leadership. You can do all the perfect things, and sometimes it resonates with people and sometimes it doesn't. And so I had a person on my team that was just driving me crazy because I just couldn't figure out how to make that connection. And I went into my peer Brian's office to, just kind of vent about it. And he said, come on, get in my car. I'm like, what are we doing? He's like, get in my car. So we got in his car, and we drove to the back of Space Mountain, and we rode Space Mountain. And he said, when life's a roller coaster, you should ride a roller coaster.
That's awesome, thank you.
So it's awesome that when you're having a bad day, you can ride a roller coaster.
Okay, that would be awesome. So Disney is known for launching innovative game changers that continually drive excitement with the consumers, that's for sure. As a senior leader, how do you build and sustain that culture within the company?
Yeah, it's been amazing because not only do I feel like we're sustaining it, I feel like it's amplifying,
yes.
Which is surprising, because obviously, Disneyland Resort was built in 1955, and it's interesting to balance the nostalgia of this is why people love our brand with giving them new ways to enjoy our brand. So we're about to launch Disney Plus, and Yes, I know. I would assume as cast members, we might actually get it for free, but I was so excited about it that I bought a 3-year subscription for myself and for my son, who's away in college. But it's, I had an opportunity not too long ago to see some of the coming previews from Pixar and Marvel and Disney Animation, and just all of the new and innovative and just mind-bending ways that people are giving folks exposure to really fascinating life lessons using our creative product. And our CEO says, I want you to relentlessly innovate. And that percolates through all levels of the organization. There's a huge passion in Disney for relentlessly innovating.
That's fantastic. I love this question, so I'm going to go here. How would Disney characterize the importance of the A in STEAM? And it seems like Disney would be the perfect company to merge these.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I got a minor in theater because I thought Disney will love that I have a minor in theater. Unfortunately, I had to get through the VA and General Mills and General Motors and Allen Bradley and a bunch of other places before Disney finally loved that I had a minor in theater, but all worth it to get where I was going. But the irony of it is, for all you students out there, I don't know if this will make you feel better or worse, but I use probably less than 5% of what I learned in my engineering education at work. But I use probably 90% of what I learned in my theater minor at work.
Wow.
And it's because as a leader, it's all about, you learn in theater how to portray different emotions through your nonverbals. Well, as a leader, it's really important you can read people's nonverbals, right? And you do the meeting and say, is everybody with me? And you're like, oh, you're not quite with me, are you? Tell me more, And so those abilities are so core to leadership. And I really advise anybody that has an artistic passion. First of all, I think it just for all of our work-life balance, having a creative outlet is really key to relaxation. That's my personal meditation, using that creative outlet. But I also think it just is a key part of diversity. It gives you a different dynamic and a different filter that allows you to see the world in a new perspective and in a new way.
Absolutely, thank you.
And by the way, it may not be aligned. I was talking to a student yesterday who her passion is playing the flute, and she's a chemical engineer, and there are things she understands a little differently about chemical engineering because she plays the flute. So it may not be as obvious as theater and Disney, but whatever it is, if it speaks to your soul, make sure you nurture it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, have you met Harrison Ford? I couldn't resist. He was on here. I was like, well, have you?
I have not, but I've met Kevin Feige, who's head of Marvel, and that's frankly really cool.
Really cool. All right, well, it is time to wrap, so I'm going to wrap with this last question. What advice would you give to a woman engineer who wants to change the world?
Do it. I mean, come on, the world needs to be changed, so good for you for recognizing that. And honestly, there is no barrier that is an unstoppable barrier. All of the people who have changed the world are people who saw anything standing in their way as just another opportunity to use their skills and abilities to figure out a solve. So it's out there, ladies, do it.
Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today. You were fabulous. And I'm sure everyone out here has many takeaways from your presentation. So thank you to everyone who joined us today in Anaheim and who asked questions. Finally, thank you to our sponsors this morning, the Boeing Company, Discover, PepsiCo, and Stanley Black & Decker. I hope everyone has a wonderful day and go out there and enjoy We 19.